Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the episode, we pick the viewer's pick of the week, so one of your comments can be featured in this episode. So be sure to let me know your pick of the week in the comments. Now, jumping in, we had about 13 books this week, which is a little heavier size haul, but a right number. Last week I had 17. That was a very heavy haul for me. So going into number 13, which is the Batman or Batman the Knight, issue 1. And there's a lot of Batman books going on right now. The reason I got this one was because it's Chip Zdarsky. I was like, all right, I'm going to try it out. I've really enjoyed Chip Zdarsky's writing. I like his kind of Elseworld stories we've gotten in the past. I really like Spider-Man life story that he wrote a few years ago, so I enjoyed that. So I'm like, all right, let me give this a shot. And it kind of goes into the Batman fatigue. I'm like, all right, I've kind of seen this story before. There's a couple of different angles here and there, but it's the early years of Batman. You're not really seeing a lot of Batman in this issue, and I just didn't really get the punch I wanted or the twist I wanted to want to pick up another Batman title for another 10 issues. So I don't know if I'm going to get issue 2 on this one. I'm sadly wasn't as impressed as I thought I would be for this book. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12. Speaking of another Bat book, it's Robin's issue 3. This is another one I'm a little torn on if I should keep on my pull list. I love Stephanie Brown. I have many books of Stephanie Brown, so that's one reason to keep it on the pull list. But I just haven't been able to get into this book because it's this kind of out of continuity book. I don't think the dialogue really hits home here for me. A lot of it it just kind of bores me, this issue. So, and even the plot I think could be a little stronger here. The dynamic I thought would have been the shining star, and really it kind of fizzles some of the interplay between the Robin characters, which really should be, again, the star of this show. Artwork is okay for this book overall. So it's just kind of this middle of the ground book where I think this could have been such a fun concept and such a fun title and a really cool character driven book. So overall, I'm going to give this 2 stars. We'll see how long it stays on my pull list. I know there's 6 issues left, so I feel like this is the time to kind of drop it, but I also really like the gym covers, so I'm like, I kind of want to collect all those covers too. And I still don't have the Stephanie Brown one, which I think is the last issue of this Robin series, so maybe I'll just pick up the rest just for that. But so far, story wise, I haven't been loving it. Moving on to number 11, which is another book that I want to love, but I just it's kind of just sticking with because of the creative team, and that is Hulk issue 3. And there's just a lot going on for the first 3 issues here. You're kind of in Hulk's head. You have multiverses going on here. There's some interesting tidbits, especially the cliffhanger with Thunderbolt Ross, and I love the artwork. It's grim and very gory, and I like that. I like that visually. It's a very different style from Immortal Hulk. It's gory, but it's also very bright, and obviously Immortal Hulk kind of played more into the horror aspect of the character. This is definitely playing more with the superhero aspect. And Donny Cates, I remember Thor. I really didn't love the first couple of issues of that book, and I dropped it. And then I was hearing really good stuff, and I was like, oh, let me just see what's going on in this. And it's one of my favorite Marvel titles. So I think that's why it's also hard for me to drop off Hulk. A, I like the Hulk family, but B, I know this creative team has a lot to say, and it's just maybe a shaky first arc, the way they're telling the story. So I do want to try holding on to this a little longer. So overall, I'm going to give that 2 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, another book that's usually a little higher, but I hate using this word, but it's a bit of a filler arc here, and that is Superman Son of Kal-El, issue 7, and it's the team up kind of between Aqualad and Superman. There's some scenes with Jay and John, but not a ton of really hard-hitting scenes. They're just kind of there with each other as they're dealing with the bigger arc of climate change and how that affects Aqualad as well. A story that I just wasn't as invested in. Obviously, it's a very important topic, but the way it was told here, it just it didn't really fit for me in this Superman story thus far. I think they tried to make it fit with Jay's background, but I just wasn't as entertained. And even the interaction with Aqualad and Superman didn't really do it for me either, which I thought that would be a bigger moment than it was. Artwork is always really strong for this book though, so that was really solid here. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 10, I believe. Moving on to number 9, which is, one I just kind of got on whim, but Devil's Reign, X-Men issue 1. And I'm not really picking up many X-Men titles right now. I've been kind of getting tired of the Krakoa stuff. Right now, I'm just getting Marauders, I think, actually. That's the only X-Men title I have on my list. But I love Emma Frost, and I've enjoyed Jerry Dugan's writing for Emma Frost in Marauders, and I'm like, Elektra and Emma Frost? Why are they on the cover? Like, what do they have to do with each other? And I really like the opening of this book. I thought that was the strongest aspect of this book. And then once it gets to the present, it kind of gets to the convolutedness of Krakoa. And I'm like, I'm not as interested in this and Emma's connection. I like the beginning of it more. I think Phil Noto's art style works pretty well for this book because we've seen his artwork a lot for the X-Men. But like I said, I think it worked a little better in the beginning where we had kind of had this more spy portion of the issue, and then we got more into like the political portion and talking heads portion by the end of the issue. So overall, I'm going to give that 2.5 stars. I don't really think it gave me enough to want to pick up the next issue. Moving on to number 8, which is Power Rangers issue 15. This is mostly an action issue, so we get to see some really good action. We get to see the Zords that you never thought was imaginable to see together are together on one page. I will say that the action gets really crowded. There's a lot going on in this issue, and it's, it tends to be sometimes a wordy book, and with so much action pieces and so much dialogue, I felt like the book didn't have a lot of time to breathe here, but I enjoyed the interactions. If you enjoy what's been going on in the war, it does hit a little bit more with the mythology, which is not my favorite part of Power Rangers, but I still had fun with the action side of it, and even if it was a little overstuffed for this one. So the pencils itself were very clean. So overall, I'm going to give that 3 stars. It's kind of in the middle for me. I don't think it was the best of the war issues, but it kind of goes from point A to point B here. Moving on to what are we up to? We're up to number 7, and that is Aquaman. No, I'm sorry. That is actually The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 86. And this is I think a better issue than what we've been getting. Like, we finally get some progression, but it's not anything I quite care about. I don't care about Ben Reilly as in this Beyond. I would say I don't care about Ben Reilly and his connection to this Beyond corporation. Because I like Ben Reilly as a character. I think he's cool. I just don't think they really know what to do with him because he was dead for such a long time. And they're like, now he's back. He was a villain. What is there to do with Ben Reilly in 2022 compared to 1990s, which they did have that Ben Reilly book come out this week. I'm curious to see what Ben Reilly fans thought of that book compared to what they're trying to do now. Is it better just to lean into the classicness of that character? But yeah, this issue we get to see at least some movement of, okay, what is this Beyond Corporation? How is it affecting Ben and his loved ones? And Ben's memories like erased again, and maybe he'll become like a whole new character by the end here, which I don't really know if I want to see, because again, we saw the villain portion of Ben already. I don't need to see the mixed memories of Ben. I feel like that's retreading recent water for Ben. So the artwork is pretty solid for it, but I still don't love this arc, but I think this is a better chapter of this arc. So overall, I'm giving that 3 stars. Moving on to number 6, which is what I said before. It's Aquaman The Becoming, issue 5. This is the penultimate issue, the prelude to Aquaman, which I am excited for to see how it's gonna relate to Mera and the royal family. And it's been a kind of cool build up to learn more about Jackson's family. This kind of felt a bit crowded. They try to really stuff a lot into this issue where we get to see a bit from Jackson's potential romance, a lot between him and his sister, and then we get some tidbits with the mom, and then I would say some glimpses of what Aquaman's going to be and what the role of Aquaman means. And I like the family moments. I enjoyed that. I just think there's just so much going on in this issue. I kind of wish it pressed the brakes a little bit and paced it a little better. But I like the art style a lot for this book. I like Jackson as a character, and I'm interested to see what that's going to mean for the bigger picture of this franchise. So overall, I'm going to give that 3 stars, and then it's number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Silk, issue 1, and this is another new series of Silk. They tend to do mini-series for Silk now. I don't know if this is a mini-series or not. It might be an ongoing. It's the same artist who did the previous Silk volume and has done Miss Marvel and a lot of the young hero characters, which I guess we'll call Silk new YA. I don't know. It's not really a YA book. It's not really for teens, but it's kind of in this middle ground of, the Spider-Man audience. But yeah, for this one, we get to see the glimpses of her wanting to find herself as Cindy, and what that means for Silk as well. The things I didn't love about this issue, definitely the social media end of it all. There's times where I think, a great example is Snock Girl. I think they utilize social media really well in breaking down what social media is, but sometimes I feel like stories just use social media because they think it's popular, and I think it was more on that later end where it's like, okay, we know social media is a medium that everyone uses, let's, I guess, just use it here. There are moments where you're like, oh, it's cool to see how news came out through social media. I think that was the aspect I enjoyed. I enjoyed just the Daily Bugle side of Cindy, and seeing her relationship with J. Jonah Jameson, how that's different than Peter and her becoming a journalist. I like the therapy sessions, I thought was good in this. But then it was the main story where I was like, I wasn't as invested in, and I hope we get more invested as the story goes on. But I just like Cindy's story so far, and even that I don't think really came to the forefront as much as other Silk series has. So I'm going to overall give this 3 stars. I will give the next issue a try, and probably multiple issues, because I genuinely like this character, but I do think they need to punch up the personal story a bit more and hopefully weave that into well with the main plot. So I'm giving that 3 stars. Moving on to number 4, which is Angel issue 1. I have not picked up the Buffy series in a while, or Buffy related series in a while, just because I kind of thought it went on a little bit too much of its own track. It felt like they relied so much on the television show, your knowledge of the television show, but never really stated any of that character growth in the book. And that was my biggest problem. Even though I've seen all the shows, I've seen all the episodes, it just felt like for new readers, if they were trying to read it, it just got really confusing and maybe a little bit too involved in its mythology. Now with Angel, they are scaling back, and they're really, in this issue, really trying to make it like the show, but I feel like this would have been a better story for an issue 5 or 6 or another arc, to open up a new series with them kind of having a special episode. It's like the puppet episode, or any kind of multiverse episode where it's like, okay, this is, or not multiverse, but alternate reality episode where you're like, okay, we know something's up here, right? They're actors now. That's weird. That's something different. So it kind of feels that like that alt-U situation. Probably there's a bigger story to that. But the things I liked is that we actually do get to see the characters from the show that were mainly involved in the show, like Lauren and Cordelia, where the other Angel series really was only about Angel. And what Angel was successful at, and even Buffy was successful at, was its ensemble cast. And we do get to see them utilized here. I love seeing Cordelia's visions. I thought that was really cool. But I felt like they were trying to do too much at the same time. There's too many characters at the same time. They really weren't working as an ensemble in this book. And because of the alternate reality aspect of it, or at least the thing that's very different from the original Angel show, it kind of got too caught up into that. I'm on the fence of getting the next issue or not, but I love Cordy, so I might. But I do think that it's a book that does have promise. So I'm going to overall give that 3 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is 7 Secrets, issue 13. And this was a really well done issue. We had a pretty long hiatus, so it took me a little while to kind of get my footing of like, oh yeah, that happened in the last issue. But we opened up with Casper's narrating his death. So you're like, okay, yeah, we're reminded that he is going to die at some point and is coming soon. And then we do get to see the mom getting hurt and how the rest of the 7 Secrets group react to that now that she's the leader. But most importantly, we learn a lot about them. I love learning about the queen and how she became the queen. That was definitely my favorite part of the issue. And then we also get to see some really interesting plot progression with Amon, who's our main villain, and in seeing that they know the future, and they not only know the future of Casper, which is why they're going to kill him, but also the future of themselves. So, and obviously as readers, we don't know that. So that was an interesting POV section of the issue where you're like, oh, I'm curious. It's cool that these characters know, but I want to know as like an audience member. So I really liked how they utilize that story, and I think it was a pretty good building block for, I'm sure, some really explosive stories. I will say there visually was a lot going on, so it did feel a little crowded in that aspect, but I enjoyed the story, and I'm excited for this series to be back. So I'm gonna give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, speaking of Tom Taylor, we have Nightwing, issue 88. And it's a pretty simple story, piggybacking off of last issue where Dick Grayson has a bounty on his head, I guess we'll call it, and people want to kill him. People want to make money. People see that he's trying to do a lot for Bloodhaven, and he's very much in the spotlight. We find out who wants to kill him, and the Teen Titans come save the day, and that's mostly the issue. It's a pretty simple issue, but I thought it was very fan servicey in a good way. I really like just seeing, Nightwing hanging out with the Teen Titans with some gorgeous artwork, and just seeing their personalities really radiate in this issue, where there's just a few panels of Donna or Starfire, but the few panels that are there, their voices really shout out at you, and that I think was the most pleasurable thing of this issue. But also you do get some small movement of the main story of this Hart guy, who I keep forgetting because we do kind of navigate into different land with some of these other issues, but I do hope we get to see some progression with that story as well. So overall, giving this 4 stars. I had a fun time with it, and if you're a Dick Grayson fan, I think you will too. Now, moving into number 1, which was an obvious one for me. It was my most anticipated book as well, and that is She-Hulk, issue 1. I am a huge Runaways fan, and Rainbow wrote a phenomenal Runaways volume and run. I don't remember an issue I disliked. Honestly, it was just such a perfect run for me, and I was so excited for her to jump on as She-Hulk because obviously Runaways had ended and I wanted to hear Rainbow's voice, but also I know she's a big fan of She-Hulk, so to have a big fan jump onto this character who I feel like has been a little lost for her past couple series and even team books, there's been a lot that's happened to her, but taking her back to status quo I thought was very good, where we get to see Jen is not in a good spot. She doesn't have a lot of money because of, they do tie into the events of Avengers where she was more of the Hulk that we know from Bruce. So, she probably couldn't carry her job as a lawyer. And now that she's back, she wants to get her feet back on the ground. And there's just these really awesome character moments between her and her villain where they're just like, why are we doing this dance? We're just fighting each other because we want to blow out steam. That's fine. You have a good life. Do you really want to ruin it? Let's just, do some boxing classes together, pretty much, with each other, because we were very strong, and we could just hit each other in that regard and not have to steal anything or be bad people. And I love that opener. And then we get to see some fun character moments with her and Janet, and then her just getting adjusted and getting adjusted to life as a lawyer. And I love when we get to see the interplay between Jen Walters as the human and She-Hulk. And we do see that interplay really nicely here, which does remind me more of the 80s run than, maybe some of the other She-Hulks we've seen, where she's just mostly just She-Hulk. And there's a really good ending if you're an Avengers fan. The Jackson Hearts returns, which we haven't seen this character in decades. So to see him return is like, whoa, what's happening here? So that was just such a great way to start your series. You have a really exciting plot while you're building characters so well, and there's just some really great character moments. And I thought the artwork really fit, almost like this Dan Slott run feel. With that run, it kind of had a familiar tone to me. So I really enjoyed the art, loved the coloring for this book as well, and I just thought it was a really solid start, and hopefully this is a good sign for She-Hulk, because I do think she has needed a direction for a while, and this feels like a really solid direction for me. So I'm going to give that 4 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was, and the viewer's pick of the week from last week was Fantastic Four, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.